And the second thing is about faith. I had a conversation yesterday with someone at lunch, and we were talking about marriage, and I was sharing that I believe that one day I'm going to get married. And he said that he's married, by the way, an older gentleman, and said, well, there's not many options in North Carolina, so it's hard. It's the men are either all gay, afraid of commitment, or something else he said. I can't even remember. They're not spiritual or something like that. And I said, that really doesn't matter. All I need is for God to bring me one person who's my purpose partner and my person. And he can and he will do it. And it got me thinking about how I find that Christians often say things with their mouth, not really realizing that your words have power. There's a verse in Proverbs 18:21 that says, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Right? And after that man said that, a lady was next to him, and she said, in response to me saying it doesn't matter what the statistics show, she said, but you have to be realistic. And I just want to share to you that faith is not realistic. Faith is believing in something that there's absolutely no evidence for, that you see no evidence for this thing happening. For example, Noah. God told him to build an ark. It had never rained before. He probably didn't even have the resources. They thought he was crazy, but he was like, no, God told me to do this, and it's going to rain. I'm going to build an ark. There will be a flood. And what happened? There was a flood. Over and over in the Bible, there are so many stories whereby God spoke to someone, they exercised faith, and that thing came to pass. And we believe these stories in the Bible, which, if you really think about it logically, seem like fairy tales. Daniel being in a lion's den and the next morning coming out alive. The 3 Hebrew boys being thrown into the fire and not getting burned. But the people who were supplying the fire and working there got burned. Unrealistic stories. God parting the Red Sea when the Israelites were leaving Egypt. Elijah being fed food, the 5 loaves and the fishes, that Jesus multiplied. There's so many stories of ridiculous, unrealistic things happening. But somehow people can't translate that. If that happened then, the same God who was God then is the same God now and can do that same thing for me in my life right now. And so when you pray, when you cancel your prayers by saying, oh, I don't think it's going to happen, when you look at the optics through your human limited vision and you're looking in the natural, when you look at the statistics and say, oh, I can't be healed from this because the doctor said XYZ, only 2% people recover. Oh, I can't get pregnant because the doctor said XYZ, or I'm too old, I'm too this, I'm too that, or I can't get married because I live in a city where there's hardly no single men and I don't see any single man that's my age. Well, that's what faith is, believing in something although there's no evidence for it. And when you pray, you must have faith. That's a prerequisite for your prayers being answered. One prerequisite. First, you must pray in alignment with God's will, but then you also must have faith. Because if you don't have faith, what I've learned and what I believe is that prayer won't even be answered until you have faith. And so I think what we need is like a generation of people that have faith, that don't doubt God so much. Like, I take the stories in the Bible as like, if these things could happen to these people back then, God can do anything, literally, in my life right now. And I've always maintained that posture. That's how I was able to do a lot of the things that I've done in life, from going to medical school from a family where there's no one who's a doctor, growing up in poverty, having a father with a mental illness. I'm the least likely person that would have become a physician, and now starting a business, doing all of these things that most people wouldn't even think to do. It's by faith. And so to me, when God gives me a vision and he says, this is going to happen, I know it's going to happen. And I already start acting like it's going to happen. Like when God told me to go to medical school because XYZ, in my mind, I was already a doctor. So when I've been on those interviews, I was super confident. And I remember even at Wake Forest, which is where I ended up matriculating, and during the interview, I was so confident And he probably was like, how is this girl so confident? And I even was like, he said something about like, what if you don't get in? And I was like, I'm going to get in somewhere. Even if I don't get in here, I'm going to get in somewhere in some medical school, and I'm going to become a doctor, like point blank, period. Facts, right? And so I truly believe and just want to encourage you that I don't care what your situation looks like. It could be so dire right now. And actually, I just thought of another example of this. I was diagnosed with long COVID and chronic fatigue syndrome. Been dealing with that since 2021. Doctors couldn't help me. Very clueless, to be quite frank. Most of them, I didn't know much about it either. Anyway, but I believed that I was going to fully recover, even though it seems very unlikely. But I believed it. And once I believed it, I started walking and acting like that was happening. I started researching treatments. I started taking different supplements. I started seeing myself with energy, with no more brain fog, as healed. And then later on, after putting in the work, those things came to pass. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if you're praying for healing, if you're praying for deliverance, if you're praying to have a child, if you're praying for marriage, if you're praying for restoration of a relationship, you must be praying in alignment with God's will first and foremost, but you must have faith. If you don't have faith, that thing is probably not going to come to pass. And faith and logic are the opposite. Faith and being realistic are the opposite. And if you need a reminder, let me read a couple of verses about what faith is. Hebrews 11:1 says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. The evidence of things not seen. And then 2 Corinthians 5:7 says, for we walk by faith, not by sight. So I know this may be harder for some people. And for me, this is one of my spiritual gifts I've learned. And so I just want to sprinkle a little bit of faith your way and help you to encourage you, encourage you that the same God that did all those miracles and things in the Old Testament and the New Testament is the same God that can work a miracle in your life right now. And so I just want to share that because when I had that conversation yesterday, I was like, oh, sir, I do not receive that. I didn't say it like that, but basically I was like, no, I don't receive that. Like, I am very careful about the words that I speak, the people that I'm around. If you're negative, you're speaking those words into the atmosphere, I don't want no parts of it. And so I refuse to look at what it looks like and say, oh, well, I'm in a city with hardly any single men. Like, so what? Like, you think God can speak to someone who knows me, who knows him, and connect us, even though he lives in another state? Like, people keep limiting God so much. And I'm like, I don't even understand why. Like, I don't understand why. I have seen him moved in miraculous ways in my life so many times that it's like, if God says it's going to happen, I believe it's going to happen. All I need to do is be obedient and do what he tells me to do when he tells me to do it and keep the faith. But don't let anyone discourage you and tell you that what you're dreaming of, what God told you, what you're thinking about is unrealistic. Because most of these stories in the Bible, if you look at it through your human limited eyes with logic, seem very unrealistic. They seem like fables. Okay? So faith, logic cannot go together. And the more that you trust God, the more that you exercise faith and you see him move, your faith will get stronger. And I think sometimes God will reward our faith just to show us how pleasing it is to him when we believe. When we believe. It's so important. So I did not intend for this video to be so long. It was supposed to be real, but I'm going to upload it now to my YouTube channel and I'll post it to social media about faith. But sign up for my fast. It starts tomorrow. It's going to be amazing. We're trying to build bolder believers who have more faith, who are walking in their purpose, who are treating their bodies like the temple that they are. Not putting trash in their bodies. They're honoring God with their lifestyle choices and their lifestyle habits. So that's all. I just want to encourage you. You cannot look at what things look like in the natural. You have to believe it and see it in the spiritual first. And there is life and death in the power of your tongue. So I would encourage you, again, to be very mindful of the words that you speak. I do not allow negative words to come out of my mouth. I speak positive words, and I believe for what God has told me will come to pass. I believe the Bible, and I think there's a lot of people that call themselves Christians and go to church but lack faith, and I don't understand it. I really don't understand it. Yeah. So that's it. Have a good Sunday, and I'll see you tomorrow if you join my fast. If not, you can join the next one. This may be something that I do every month, like the first Monday to Wednesday, and it'll be amazing. You'll grow in faith, grow closer to God, increase your spiritual discernment and your ability to hear God's voice. That's very important, especially in these last days that we're in. All right, later.